Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. Who am I? Well, I am your host. My name is John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around with us as we get together to talk about our favorite things in the world: movies, movie news, a little bit of television, all sorts of good stuff. And joining me today in his own, big yacht of good stuff is one Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how's the yacht of good stuff floating in the sea of tranquility?
Well, it's actually the Sea of Imagination, John. The Sea of Tranquility was last week. That was when my tranquility left me. So I'm living in my imagination now. But it is great. I have to say that one of the things that gives me great solace in these times of let's just say tumult, is the fact that I'm surrounded by stuff I love, as I know you are, whether it's people, whether it's comic books, whether it's action figures or model kits or movies. I'm telling you, it's kind of a great time to indulge your imagination and your fantasies. So that's good.
Last night, speaking of which, we all of us are like struggling to find ways about, what do we do for fun while we're under these circumstances? So what other people have done, and what me and some of my friends did last night, we actually got on Zoom. That's the online meeting software stuff. And we were setting up our Dungeons and Dragons game. We had all of us, I put some pictures up of it on my social media last night. So we had all of us, across the screen on top, our maps on the bottom and all that kind of stuff, and just figuring out ways to play D&D from home and all this kind of stuff. Oh, and I should mention, guys, I was trying to set up a Netflix watch party today. If you guys haven't seen this thing Netflix is setting up, this watch party thing is really cool, where you can set up an event and it syncs to everybody who's in the event and you all get to watch the movie together. But Unfortunately, the Netflix extension has been having some bugs and I haven't been able to set it up properly. So even though I said we were going to do a watch party today, the thing hasn't started working. So we'll do that sometime later in the week. But listen, guys, we do have a lot of stuff to talk about here today, but every day on the John Campea Show, we talk about a bunch of topics. But what I've started doing is I go through the comments section on all the videos and I get a big kick out of the stuff you guys are talking about. So we like to start the new show by looking at the top comments from the previous show. So these are some of the comments that we pulled from Friday's show. Taking a look at this thing here, Flapjack wrote in, "Yes, it makes sense that Netflix reduced their bit rates. We were talking about that on Friday, that Netflix has agreed in Europe to reduce their streaming bit rate by 25% to help alleviate all the internet bandwidth issues going on in Europe while everybody's working from home, for the good of mankind or whatever. But as of now, their decision is no skin off their back. Subscribers that paid for a 4K or high bitrate product should have their monthly rate reduced in kind." I don't know. I think you can still broadcast at 4K, reduce the bitrate by a quarter, and I don't think you're going to notice a big difference, to be honest with you. But hey, that is something for keep in mind, Flapjack, and that's something a lot of people are feeling as well. All right, Kirito Swords writes, "If you're looking for a movie to watch, I recommend watching The One. Ever wanted to see an action-packed multiverse movie where Jet Li fights Jet Li? Then this is the movie for you." Two little interesting notes about The One. Number one, Jason Statham is also in The One. It's one of his first big ones. And also, The One was the first actual Hollywood movie that the visual effects company that I was working at and the CG company I was working at, that was our first contract that we ever got on an actual Hollywood movie, which is kind of a thing. So I wholeheartedly endorse your suggesting The One. Another one comes to us from Kitty, who wrote, "I think and hope that the MCU's to return with yet another amazing decade." Of course, last Friday we talked about, are the best days of the MCU ahead or are they behind? I feel like the reason people feel like the best days of the MCU are behind them is because of what the MCU has achieved was unprecedented. And it's often hard to repeat the first success, like in music. So the second round sometimes is just second to the best. But then there are artists who continuously deliver album after album with fantastic songs and music. And so I will wait for Black Widow and the next Marvel without any expectations to avoid disappointments. Instead, I will be open to whatever Kevin Feige and his team of magicians at Marvel have in store for us. And you know what I love about what Kitty just wrote is that that's a great analogy, because like you two, I like metal, I like classic, I like just about everything out there except for country music, admittedly. But my all-time favorite band is actually U2, and U2's best album was Joshua Tree. It's one of the greatest albums of all time. It's Joshua Tree. They've never put out an album as good as Joshua Tree, which came out in like 1987 or something like that. But they have still continued to put out amazing, fantastic, world-changing music just not quite as good as that. So it's an interesting analogy there to the music industry. So thank you for sending that in, guys. And that was Friday's top comments. Listen, guys, make sure if you're watching this show after the fact, leave your comments, and maybe you'll see one of your comments listed as a top comment on tomorrow's show. All right, guys, let's start getting into it. And before we get into our main topics, we do have one off the top to get to. Now, one of the hardest hit countries, and certainly the country that kind of we started taking notice of right away when this whole thing started, was the country of China. It's gone through a lot, and they took a lot of extreme measures. Well, an interesting thing came across the newswire today as I was looking over on Deadline. And Deadline right now is reporting that China has made enough progress that they are now reopening over 500 of their movie theaters as their cases of coronavirus start to ease. Now, if you're asking, well, why isn't it easing here? Remember, they were way ahead of us when it comes to this stuff. They were getting it really bad while we still weren't really noticing it. So they're a little bit ahead of the curve on that. But they're opening. And one of the interesting things, Rob, because we're going to get to this a little bit and how it pertains to North America when we get into the main topics. But one of the interesting things, it says in the report that the Chinese government has mandated that the movies that they open in theaters right now, the movie theaters get to keep 100% of the box office, which is completely rare and unheard of. But I think China just wants to help the theaters get back on their feet quickly, because China recognizes, hey, movie theaters are an important part of culture. We want to help, and they're being very hard hit by this. We want to see them get back on their feet. I got to admit, and maybe it's just me being somebody who's desperately looking for a silver lining and who's desperately looking for some good news, but I see this because, God, I miss going to the movie theaters. But I see this and I think, okay, if China, who got hit hard by this long before we did, blah, blah, if they're at the point now that they're starting to reopen theaters, Rob, am I just being overly optimistic to go? It makes me feel a little bit of hope. It makes me feel like, yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe, maybe soon, and I don't mean soon as in next week, but, relatively soon, that maybe at some point we're going to be getting back into the movie theaters. Maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel. Rob, you saw this. What do you make of it?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And remember, I mean, with everything that's going on right now, America is at the beginning of this crisis, and we're dealing with it. But when there's a lot of testing going on, when tens of thousands of people are being able to be tested, that's where they can find the virus. And the fatality rate is still luckily small. And when you can segregate the population, and when the virus is discovered, you can quarantine those people. We can eventually get back to going about our business. And I think that China's response after initially being impacted and what's going on in South Korea sort of shows that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that as we're ramping up our own response in this country with people socially distancing and the government stepping in, and I've been very impressed with a lot of the local leadership on the state level. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be seeing No Time to Die before November or Fast and the Furious. I'm not going to get my Justice for Han until 2021, but maybe I'll get to see Tenet. Maybe I'll get to see Dune. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's not all bad. So I do see, John, that spring has arrived, and the clouds will dissipate, the cold will go away, flowers will bloom, and eventually this crisis too shall pass, and I will be eating hot buttered popcorn delivered the way you want me to deliver my butter to my popcorn.
And it's important to point out, look, we understand none of us are going back to the movies next week. We understand that. Maybe not even next month. So when I say soon, I don't mean as in imminently. I just mean, hey, at least at some point there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I like hearing that at any rate. But maybe I'm just being optimistic. Guys, question is, you start to see this news. Does it put things in perspective from you? Do you not really pay attention to it at all? Hey, it's all good. We're in unprecedented times. What do you guys think? Jump into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's now move on to our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with our main topics by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. And then hit submit. And then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Steve, who writes, "So, actress Evangeline Lilly is proudly refusing to self-isolate herself or her family. If they make a third Ant-Man, should they replace her with another actress? Should such reckless, dangerous idiocy be rewarded with a generous payday? If she got drunk, got behind the wheel, and crashed her car into a school gate, Marvel would drop her in an instant. Aren't her actions just as dangerous and a risk to life? What kind of example does this set for young MCU fans?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Steve. I appreciate that. And yes, Evangeline Lilly, ladies and gentlemen, who I'm not going to lie, I just adore Evangeline Lilly. She's a good Canadian kid. I've had a chance to sit and interview her on a couple of occasions. She's completely delightful, big, bubbly, bloom of energy and wonderfulness and all that kind of stuff. The reality is, we live in a world, ladies and gentlemen, where smart people, good people, intelligent people can do or say some really stupid things. That's just the world we live in. I like to consider myself a fairly intelligent person. Like I can tie my shoes, but I will do and say stupid things sometimes. You are fairly intelligent people, but I'm absolutely sure you have done and said some really stupid things sometimes that maybe you look back on and shake your head. I believe Evangeline Lilly is a wonderful person, but this statement she made is really rather ridiculous. This is what she said. Now, we're going to put this in context in a second, but this is what Evangeline Lilly said. This was in response on Twitter. Now, understand this. She did not hold a national press conference, ask reporters to come to her house to say, "I want to make a statement to America." It was on Twitter. Somebody asked her something. She made this reply. "Some people value their lives over freedom. Some people value freedom over their lives. We all make our choices." Now, that was in response to the fact that where she lives, there is kids' gymnastic classes are still allowed to be open, and she wrote that she took her kids to kids' gymnastics class. She took some heat on Twitter. She just mentioned on Twitter she took some heat on Twitter for doing that, and she just said, "Hey, look, I value my freedom over my life and stuff like that," and blah 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 blah. Now, of course, the first thing that comes to mind for me when I hear a comment like that is what I'm hearing a lot of these idiot kids on the beaches saying, which is like, "Well, I don't care if I get sick," or "I'll be fine if I get sick," or something like that. And they fail to properly understand that the issue, we don't care if you get sick, you idiot. We care as a society that if you get sick, you don't just become a sick person, you become a transmitter. You become somebody who's going to get other people sick. And then those people are going to get other people sick. And that's the thing. So yes, I look at what Evangeline Lilly said as being completely idiotic. It's completely stupid. It's completely dumb. However, let me say this. In the instant cancel culture that we kind of live in right now, I think we need to also step back, take a little bit of a breath, and remember that where she lives right now, what she's proposing that she's doing, remember, she's not saying I'm going to jump around and start hugging and spitting in people's ears on the street. She didn't say that. She didn't. This was something she made a comment on her thing. And understand this, clearly where she lives, doing that is not illegal. What she's doing is not breaking any rules or any laws that are in place where she lives. It's just not. The example of if she got behind the wheel of a car drunk and ran her car into like a school bus or something like that, yeah, but at that level, she is clearly violating and breaking existing laws that we have in our land to protect ourselves and to protect people. There is a difference. You may say there's not a difference, but there is a difference right now. that she's doing something that the current law allows her the freedom to make a choice to do if she wants. Do I think it's a dumb decision? Yes. But, and I don't mean to offend anybody, smoking is pretty damn stupid too. But people have the freedom to smoke if they want. That's the way things in our country. And I'm not going to cancel somebody who smokes, even though they're harming themselves and harming people around them with their secondhand smoke. But that's the law. So I don't judge anybody for doing that. Even though I personally think it's dumb, it's whatever. Now, I'm also not trying to equate, Rob. I'm not sitting here trying to equate that, what Evangeline Lilly is doing is no more harmful than, somebody smoking out in public. I'm not trying to equate that either. I'm just saying that I don't think we should be so quick to jump on the cancellation thing. Do we have the right to say that what she's doing is stupid? Yes. Should she lose her job for it? No. Unless like she's living in New York City and the governor says there's an absolute quarantine, no one's allowed to leave your house, and then she gets on Twitter and says, I'm doing it anyway. Well, okay, then that becomes a different issue. But right now she's simply exercising a right that she does have to make right now. Even though I think it's dumb. Do you fire people from their jobs over that? No, I don't think so. So while I think what she said is really stupid, that's exactly how I personally equate this. I think people are overreacting. And again, Rob, context is everything. It's not like she held some press conference, She was engaging with a fan on her own Twitter. She made a comment. Everybody's now taken it and made it headline news. So idiotic, yes. Fireable? No, I don't think so. Rob, I don't know. You saw this, and this is going all over the place. What do you think of it?
Well, look, I mean, I would take into consideration where she lives, what the situation is, and while I think it doesn't help on a national level, if you saw how many people were out at California beaches yesterday,
idiots.
There's a lot of people everywhere that aren't exactly adhering to the idea of social distancing. And what she was saying was, look, she's a mom trying to keep some kind of normalcy for her children. And while I wouldn't, if I had kids, I wouldn't want them to go to a gymnasium in this day and age for that very reason, especially if they're going to be around their grandparents or older people. You don't want to basically create new virus reactors. And I think that's the thing that maybe people don't understand. But also, she was talking to a fan, and why I wouldn't want to cancel her. I mean, I like her work, and we'll see where all of this is going to go. I mean, now we have this. I just don't like you were saying, the whole idea of gotcha culture. Like, let's just go getting people and let's tell on somebody and get them in trouble. I don't know. I mean, like you said, it's not illegal.
Yeah, and it's weird. It just kind of, to me, it goes to the thing about, when Christopher McQuarrie or other celebrities get off social media. We as fans, we love seeing our filmmakers and our actors and our writers on social media. It gives us a way to interact and engage. But the reason a lot of them will get off is now because, okay, wait, so if I'm not completely careful, and even just in a conversation can take, and all of a sudden a conversation I'm having on my social media becomes headline news somewhere, no wonder a lot of these people want to get off social media. The only difference, Rob, between a lot of these celebrities and us is that, if the media was going through your social media sitting at home, they would find some things that they could run headlines on too, except nobody cares if it's me or if it's you or whatever. Nobody cares. But when it's a celebrity, it's somebody else. So it's an interesting situation. So yeah, bottom line for me is completely stupid. Something you fire her off a movie franchise for? I don't think so. But guys, maybe you feel different. Maybe you've got some things that you're taking in consideration that I'm not thinking about right now. Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Serge Lange, who writes, given the symbiotic relationship between studios and theaters, is it incumbent upon the likes of Disney and Warner to help out the cinemas and their beleaguered employees at this time? It's broadly accepted that the VOD or streaming model cannot generate the profits that a theatrical run can for a release. So, should the studios help out the distributors, as the survival of one is inextricably linked to the survival of the other? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Serge. And, we've been talking about that a little bit, that topic here on the John Campea Show about there was an article by a bunch of financial analysts in Los Angeles saying they don't see how an AMC Theaters is going to survive this. It's a razor-thin margin business already. blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And, Rob, you and I kind of thought, and we said on the show last week that we kind of believe at some point maybe the studios themselves, who know they don't have a business if the movie theaters aren't there, may probably step in. Well, one of the other people calling for not only the government, but the studios themselves to step in and intervene because they understand the importance of the movie theaters is one of the most celebrated filmmakers in the world right now, Christopher Nolan. Now, Nolan, this comes from a report on Deadline talking about Nolan's stance. Nolan called movie theaters a vital part of social life, providing jobs for many and entertainment for all. He added, "As a filmmaker, my work can never be complete without those workers and the audiences they welcome. The movie-going experience has for generations been reinforcing the notion that we're all in this together," Nolan wrote. He called on the studios for strategic and forward-thinking partnership from the studios. All right, so that comes to us from Christopher Nolan, talking about how even as a filmmaker, somebody who is embedded in the studio system himself, he is saying we recognize that without the theaters, we got nothing. We got nothing without the theaters. And so studios, and Serge put it very, very well in his email, saying, there is a symbiotic relationship between the studios and the theaters. One cannot exist as they are without the other. So it does kind of become incumbent upon, and in their own survival best interests, I believe, if things get to that point, that studios may need to step up and say, we need to figure something out to support the other half of our business relationship, which are the movie theaters, to help get them through this. Now, of course, Christopher Nolan was also talking to Congress and wanting Congress to make sure that they include the movie theater industry as a part of any aid package, making the argument that this is a basic culture kind of thing. This is a part of saving our culture in many ways. At any rate, Rob, you see what's happening with the movie theaters right now, given the situation, and you hear the words of a Christopher Nolan. Do you think Christopher Nolan's onto something here? Do you think that's what needs to happen, or is he overlooking some things? Are there other options on the table that we're not considering? What do you think about all this?
Well, no, I think he's absolutely right about this. And it's like, look, movie theaters, all movie making is part of an ecosystem. And distribution, look, obviously you need to make great films. But films aren't going to get seen if there's no distribution. And distribution isn't just streaming, it's everything. It's still physical media. But first and foremost, the front line of distribution is movie theaters. And movie theaters are delivering a product, and that product might be projected with light flickering on a screen, but it's still a product to be consumed. And you have to have movie theaters and all the other support systems that allow, where do you think movie theaters get their popcorn and their candy and their soda from? They get them from other distributors that sell those things. And it's a huge lattice work of different kinds of industries that are all feeding into delivering an entertainment experience. And I think he's absolutely right. And there's a wide-reaching amount of industry and things that support movie exhibition that needs to be protected as well. So like every other business that has far-reaching tendrils out into the society at large, movie theaters are worth preserving. And let's face it, like Nolan said, at the end of the day, movie theaters are delivering joy and fun and uplift to the population. And that's in itself is worth protecting.
Well said. Well said. Question here is, guys, what do you think about that? Do you think kind of saving movie theaters at this point is some kind of charity? Do you see it as being vital to the industry and a vital part of our culture? How do you see all that right now? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to our third main topic today. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Yuri Greyworm, who writes, "Hey guys, I saw that article you were talking about on Open Mic, talking about Wonder Woman 1984 and the report that came out that Warner Brothers was considering putting it straight to streaming. My question for you guys is, what would be some of the upside of Warner Brothers taking Wonder Woman 84 directly to streaming? I know they said it isn't likely, but what would be the advantages? Thanks." All right. Thanks a lot for saying that in, Yuri. And so, yeah, basically what Yuri is talking about here is on the weekend, a story broke on The Wrap that basically said that Wonder Woman 84 is that Warner Brothers was considering taking Wonder Woman 84 directly to streaming instead of its theatrical run. Now, the producer of Wonder Woman 84, Charles Roven, immediately came out and said that's ridiculous. Now this is coming from the Wrap's own report, but Charles Roven, it said this: Roven also dismissed the idea of a streaming only release. It's ludicrous if you consider how big the movie is, a movie like this is. He said in an interview, everybody recognizes that. As interesting as streaming might be, if you want a huge global worldwide box office, you've got to release it in movie theaters. Now, kind of then compounding that whole thing was the reality of these numbers. And the reality is this. This was also in the same article that the Wrap wrote, and it's this. The most profitable pay-per-view event in U.S. history was the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight in 2015, which grossed $400 million. This is the biggest of all time. From 4.4 million buys, which, by the way, forget the dollar figure. 4.4 million buys is also the biggest buy number of any pay-per-view event in history. More people got this event than any other event in history. Charged at $90 per buy. Even at $90, $4.4 million people got it, and it still only equated, only equated to $400 million. It's hard to imagine moviegoers even paying $30 to $40 for a new release every month, so home video wouldn't even come close to the fight's revenue. So basically, let's say that Wonder Woman 84 was released in theaters, and it broke the most buys record. It broke the record, and say it had 5 million buys. 5 million people bought it at, say, 30 million a pop. 30 million a pop. Great. Well, okay. How many millions does that make? Doesn't equal a billion. Does not equal a billion. It's like, what is it, 150 million? 150 million or something along those lines? $150 million. It doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. And movie fans are not going to pay $60 for a movie. They're not going to pay $70 for a movie. They're not going to pay $90 for a movie. So basically, the producer, Charles Roven, Sony themselves basically walked through that it's not a model that works. It simply is not a model that works. As far as we currently understand. Because, Rob, I think it was Yuri. I think Yuri raises an interesting question. Okay, we've talked a lot about why it can't work or wouldn't work or may not work. But what could be theoretically some of the upside of maybe and going to do that? And by the way, since that report in the Wrap came out, Warner Brothers has come out and definitively said that no, Wonder Woman, we are not considering putting Wonder Woman directly to streaming. This is going to be in theaters one way or the other. So there's that. That's something to keep in mind. But it does raise an interesting question. What could the advantages be of a move like that? And Rob, I want to suggest two potential advantages to doing it. Now, again, the advantages I'm going to suggest are still outweighed by all those negatives we already talked about, but here are what I think would be a couple of the advantages. Advantage number one, it does guarantee some sort of revenue for Warner Brothers. Because at this point, we simply do not know when theaters are going to be open again. Maybe they'll be open again in 6 weeks. Maybe they'll be open again in, 10 weeks. Maybe they'll open again in 10 months. The reality is we simply don't know. And in the meantime, Warner Brothers is simply sitting on this incredibly expensive movie that, by the way, they've already put a bunch of advertising dollars into. So I would suggest that one advantage, and I'm acknowledging that it is outweighed by all the negatives, but I'm saying one advantage is it guarantees, at least in the short term, some form of revenue coming in. Even if it's not nearly enough, it's some form of revenue. But the second advantage is the one that I'm more fascinated by. I'm sure we've all heard the analogy and seen the things about first penguin in the water. Now, if you've ever heard that, the basic meaning behind that saying first penguin in the water is, if you ever watch these nature shows, what'll quite happen is when it's time for all the penguins to go out fishing and they got to go hunt and get their food and feed and then come back and feed their babies and all that kind of stuff, what happens is they get to the edge of the water and all of a sudden there's this huge pileup of penguins at the edge of the water and none of them are jumping in the water. Why? because there is probably a sea lion in the water waiting for them to jump in, and it always takes that first penguin to jump in. And then once the first penguin jump in, then everybody jumps in. The reason I bring up that analogy is, while all the empirical evidence that we have, Rob, currently points to the notion that a VOD release like this would be financial suicide, the reality is we've never really had a case study to study it. We've never really had a definitive case study of it. And while all that evidence does point to, yes, it would be financial suicide, it would be interesting to take a high-profile project like Wonder Woman and be that first penguin in the water. Be that first penguin to dive into the water. Now, will it dive into the water and be devoured by the sea lion of financial suicide? Maybe. Maybe. But we don't know for sure. And it would be interesting to see a big high-profile case like a Wonder Woman take that dive into the water. It would be interesting to see. Most likely it results in its death. But I still think it would be fascinating. So if I had to be hard-pressed, Rob, to come up with maybe a couple of upsides to Wonder Woman maybe doing the VOD release thing, those are a couple of advantages that I could see that would be actually quite interesting to see how it would turn out. Rob, when you think about it, and you see the comments from Warner Brothers, and you see the comments from Charles Roven, who was also a producer, by the way, on the Christopher Nolan Batman films, what can you see as maybe some of the advantages of Wonder Woman actually trying to blaze that trail and trying a VOD release?
I don't know if I see any advantages to it, quite frankly, because, like you said, the first penguin in the water is going to make mistakes, even if there is no sea lion. And there are issues in terms of paying back an investment. And Wonder Woman already, as we've talked about before, movies are made with credit lines and borrowed money. And the studios have to start repaying the money that they've borrowed to make these films. And it's the kind of thing, when they have a movie that they know, they're already doing projections based on the first Wonder Woman. So they already have projections in place that their banks are aware of, their financiers are aware of, that they're expecting to do a certain amount of money in a certain amount of time. And a movie like Wonder Woman 84 is a movie that is also not only going to make money for itself in the studio, but it also has to keep the entire studio moving forward so they can continue to make movies for the next years to come. So that revenue stream, and it's not just what the theatrical box office is, it's what ancillary markets, still there's physical media, still there's cable, international cable sales, all streaming. There's all kinds of engines of money that a movie is. A movie earns out for a number of years, even, not just what it makes the box office. And I don't think that right now, VOD, because people aren't used to doing it. In 5 years, when many penguins have gone into the water, it's just like it's just like streaming. 10 years ago, people were like, what's this newfangled streaming thing? And then a few years later, we're all Netflix and chilling because people knew what it was. And once people get into that, I mean, if you had a choice, there's going to be a lot of people, I think, once this is something that is part of the norm, there's going to be people, older people maybe, younger people are still going to go to the movies. You and I will still turn up opening night or those Thursday previews and pay our money and see these big spectacle movies on a giant screen with the thunderous sound system. But maybe in the future, the ecosystem will have changed. But right now, man, the penguins don't know if the sea lions are there. And until it's proven that the penguins can all jump in the water, they are not going to take one of their Tiffany jewels or one of their tentpole releases that the studio relies on to keep its doors open for the rest of the year. I mean, Warner Brothers could live off $1 billion hit for a year. I mean, or maybe not quite a year, but they can, and it means a lot. And they can't be like, we're going to allow one of our marquee titles to be the first penguin in the water. They can't do that. They got to start small. And you know what? People are going to look at Trolls Across the World, or whatever the heck it's called. They're going to look at, their World Tour. They're going to look at The Hunt. They're going to look at what's gone on with Invisible Man. I've heard friends of mine have told me, I got Invisible Man last night and checked it out. So there are people that are availing themselves of this, and it will propagate, and people will figure out how this works and does it work for them, and studios will eventually, I don't know. I mean, like you pointed out, that Pacquiao fight, $400 million at $90 a pop. And those are people that are used to paying for pay-per-view fights. That's something people learn to do over the course of years. So once we're there with movies, I think eventually that might be a viable way to release a large tentpole property, but not right now.
To your point, Hollywood Reporter had talked about with the release of Onward, The Invisible Man, The Hunt, that they don't have specific numbers, but they said I believe the phrase was not impressive.
Right.
Not impressive. Now, but that's a little bit of a different story, though, because, I mean, those are films that, even though they only had a very, very short time in theaters, they did at least debut in theaters. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Trolls World Tour that didn't get into theaters at all.
Also, John, I think most people, that aren't watching the John Campea Show or aren't reading Deadline or Hollywood Reporter every day, most people aren't even aware. We forget that the general population is not following the movie business the way we follow the movie business. So
True.
When Onward shows up on Disney Plus, or The Invisible Man is suddenly available for download, people are like, how is that any different than what always happens? Because people aren't necessarily aware that those movies are, like, my mom's like, I saw the Invisible Man on pay-per-view. Is that like the Claude Rains movie I saw when I was a little girl? My mom doesn't know, so for her, it would make no difference. So I think only the people that are on the cutting edge of this know, but eventually it will trickle down to the masses and everybody will know, but not right now. It's too new.
By the way, I am now dying to meet your mother to see if she actually sounds like that. I
She
just have
actually
this.
does not.
I have this insatiable
Although she does
curiosity
say-
now.
She goes, Bob. She does say that when I'm in trouble. Bob.
All right, guys. Question is for you. We've heard all the reasons against, but if you had to think of some advantages of maybe taking a tentpole film like a Wonder Woman and just saying, you know what, we're just going to dive into that water and put it out in VOD, what would you see as some of the advantages of doing that? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. One more thing we're going to do here before we go running off into our live questions is, with a lot of us being stuck at home these days, it's never been better to go back and look at some great movies that were, say, a little bit underappreciated, maybe didn't get the amount of people watching it that movie deserved to have people watch it. It might be a movie you haven't had the pleasure of discovering yet. And so we've been doing in the show every day a movie recommendation of stuff you should watch at home. And we've been dropping a lot of movies. And by the way, Rob, I've been getting, I don't know about you, but I've been getting a lot of messages from people saying, hey, I went and watched Stone Cold and I loved it. Thanks for the recommendation. Or, hey, I never did watch Stardust. Finally went ahead and did it. And we love it. So I've been hearing, it's very gratifying to hearing people going and checking out these movies. So we've got a couple of more here today. Rob, let's start off with you. What, from your treasure trove of wisdom, are you going to be recommending that is some stuff people should watch at home?
Before I start, Stone Cold is available for free on YouTube uncut.
Ooh,
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And it's just saying. So my movie, John, people always ask, what does a producer actually do? Well, one of my very favorite movies, especially a movie about movie making that was directed by the great Barry Levinson, who directed Diner and Rain Man and Bugsy and Wag the Dog, is 2008's What Just Happened. And what Just Happened is based on producer Art Linson's nonfiction book, but it's a fictionalized version of this nonfiction book. It stars Robert De Niro. First of all, check out this cast. This cast kills me. Robert De Niro, Sean Penn, indie goddess Catherine Keener, Bruce Willis, John Turturro, Robin Wright, Stanley Tucci, Kristen Stewart, the great Michael Wincott. And it's a movie about Robert De Niro is a movie producer. He's got ex-wives to deal with. He's got the studio to deal with. He's got crazy directors to deal with. He's got egomaniacal stars. Bruce Willis plays himself in this movie as the ultimate egomaniacal asshole. And I give it up to him for playing this role. I mean, and this film, as someone who's worked, you and I have both worked on films ourselves. This film, I think more than any other movie, gives you insight into what a Hollywood producer does. I think De Niro is fantastic as the character of Ben, the producer who's dealing with his ex-wives and dealing with trying to produce movies and trying to deal with movies that are in production, movies that are in post-production, and just the insanity that goes on in his life. And this film, it was still, wasn't it cheap? It was made for like 25 million bucks, but Barry Levinson sort of pulled back, and it began. He also went on and made like almost like a video film called The Bay, which is actually a pretty cool horror movie, ecological horror. And it was sort of when he couldn't get studio pictures really made, so he went the indie route. And this film, man, I watched this movie a lot. And it is one of my favorite movies about Hollywood and about movie making. And it's also a cautionary tale. And I dearly, dearly love this film. And a lot of people, I'm surprised, even people that work in the business I've met, never have heard of it. And it's Barry Levinson, man. The man who directed Rain Man.
There's a great scene. There's a great scene. I think it's like, I know the one where Bruce Willis starts to lose his shit and they're in a big wardrobe room where there's all the wardrobe. That is like one of the great scenes and one of the best scenes, maybe the best acting that Bruce Willis has done in like 20 years. Yes. It was great.
Yes. I mean, and what's really funny about Bruce Willis is he's grown a beard in this movie. And for the part, he's not supposed to have a beard. And he's just being obstinate, and he refuses to shave this beard, and he's overweight. I mean, for an actor to play himself as kind of a gone to seed dickhead was, I thought, pretty amazing to watch.
And it's normal today. That's not unusual today. Like we see actors doing like playing weird versions of themselves, whether it's different things. But that was a little bit ahead of its time for him to do that.
Yeah, and I love Catherine Keener as the studio boss.
Love her.
I mean, you really see how Hollywood works from a producer's perspective, because people are always going, "What does a producer do?" Well, if you want to know, the best version of what a producer does ever put to film is what this movie shows.
That and Wag the Dog.
Yeah,
these are two great examples of it.
Directed, which De Niro was in, and he also Barry Levinson also directed.
All right, that's a great one. That is a great one. So make sure you guys go check that one out. So let's move on to mine now.
Okay.
Mine.
You didn't tell me.
Oh, I didn't tell you what it was. Oh, that's right. Okay, so mine is a little film that came out 12 years ago. It came out in 2008. And this is what I remember. I've been trying to pick movies that I think are really, truly wonderful, but really nobody gave a lot of time of day to or don't talk about very much. This is a film that looked a little bit like a throwaway rom-com when it was first being advertised. And even though it had a star-studded list of people in it, it still looked like a little bit of a throwaway, including an up-and-coming young child actress that we all now know and love today by the name of Abigail Breslin. But it starred Ryan Reynolds, Abigail Breslin, Rachel Weisz, Elizabeth Banks, and I always mispronounce her first name. I can never know if it's Isa Fisher or Isla Fisher or whatever. I always just think of her as that girl from Wedding Crashers. Yes. And the movie that we are talking about is definitely Maybe. This movie has so much heart and charm to it and just straight up laughs. You know, I always say that a comedy, if you bring laughs, a lot of other mistakes are forgiven. Like you can do almost everything wrong in a movie. If it's a comedy and you actually deliver laughs, almost every other conceivable kind of mistake will be overlooked and forgiven. But this thing does have a lot of laughs, but it's also filled with tremendous heart and charm and personality. And basically the idea is this. At the heart of it, it's a very weird concept that even I, to this day, as a lover of this movie, will tell you it's an odd concept. It's a dad, being, of course, Ryan Reynolds, who is talking with his daughter. The whole movie takes place around a dad playing a game with his daughter in the form of a bedtime story. And basically, the game is that Ryan Reynolds is telling his daughter the story of basically the three great loves of his life. And she's got to try to guess which one is her mother, which sounds weird. And first of all, can I just say that there is a fundamental imbalance in the universe when one man, in the form of, say, Ryan Reynolds, he's had the three loves of his life being Isla Fisher, Rachel Weisz, and Elizabeth Banks. There's something fundamentally unfair about that. Then again, this is the same man who in real life has been with Scarlett Johansson and Blake Lively. So, you know, there's that. Anyway, something fundamentally unfair in the universe. But I am telling you what, this is a movie that it never broke. I don't think it definitely didn't break like $80 million at all at the box office or anything like that. This was overlooked when it was in theater. It never got the post-theatrical run love that I feel that this movie really deserved. It is a nice, funny, insightful, sweet little movie that even though there's a fundamental question, it's like, wait a minute, how come the daughter doesn't know who her mom is? But whatever. It's a really charming little film. And so the movie I want to really recommend here for you guys today is the Ryan Reynolds film, Definitely Maybe. While you're stuck at home, I think it's one you want to check out, particularly if you're stuck at home with a loved one. You want a nice little romantic comedy, something that you and your significant other can both sit down and watch together? I think that's one you guys see. Did you ever have a chance to watch Definitely Maybe, Rob?
I have, and I like it.
Oh, I'm glad.
You know, it was one of those movies that I actually caught up with on, I think when I jumped into it, I hadn't seen the whole thing. Like I came into it like 15 minutes into the movie, and it was one of those movies I just started because it really is charming, you know. And before Ryan Reynolds was Deadpool, he was Van Wilder to me.
Yeah,
you know, he and I loved Van Wilder, and so it was one of those movies that you start watching because the premise is absolutely charming. You know, you can't not watch it once you see Ryan Reynolds talking to Abigail Breslin. You're like, okay, I gotta watch this, and you do, and it's a really lovely movie. So a fine choice. And I did, by the way, go back and I watched it a second time all the way through. So.
Yeah, I think it is one of those movies that if you do miss the first 15 minutes, there's probably a little bit of a, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yes.
As you go through. So I'm glad you were able to chance to go back and watch that through. So the question is, guys, have you had a chance to watch either of these films? If not, take advantage of it and go watch them right now. And as always, guys, leave your thoughts in the comment section about other films you would recommend for people to go and see. All right. With that down, guys, we're now going to move on to our live questions. But before we do, we are going to take a short break. But instead of just a countdown clock today for our short break, we've got something a little bit different for you guys today as we go and use the bathroom, stretch our legs, refill our drinks. You know, it never ceases to amaze me when I look back at the movies turning certain number of years old and the birthdays that they turn. And this week, there are a couple of films turning 10 years old today, or this week. Two wide release films that are turning 10 years old this week that I have a very hard time believing it's been 10 years since these movies came out, because both of these movies to me feel like they just came out just a couple of years ago. Anyway, guys, sit back and relax as we talk a little bit about the film's turning 10 years old this week. Check this out. Hey guys, I'm John Campea. You know, they say that time flies, and few things make you understand that more than realizing just how old the movies that we've seen have gotten. So, if you feel like feeling old, we're going to take a look at those movies that hit the 1 decade mark this year. Yes, both of the films that we're talking about here today are celebrating their 10th anniversaries this week. So, grab your glass of prune juice and let's jump into it. Our first film just celebrated the conclusion of their story in the third film of their franchise in 2019, but it got its start 10 years ago this week with the debut of How to Train Your Dragon. Yes, it was March 26, 2010 when we first got to meet the Night Fury dragon Toothless and his wonderful human Hiccup, voiced by comedic and good Canadian actor Jay Baruchel, who you've probably seen in movies like Goon, This Is the End, and She's Out of My League. The synopsis for the film, for those of you who may not have seen it, reads like this. Hiccup, Jay Baruchel, is a Norse teenager from the Isle of Berk, where fighting dragons is in fact a way of life. His progressive views and weird sense of humor make him a bit of a misfit, despite the fact that his father, 300's Gerard Butler, is chief of the clan. Tossed into dragon fighting school, he endeavors to prove himself as a true Viking, but when he befriends an injured dragon he names Toothless, he has the chance to plot a new course for his people's future. The movie also featured the voices of America Ferrera, Craig Ferguson, Jonah Hill, his Superbad co-star Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and Deadpool's TJ Miller. The movie also scored an almost perfect 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, making it one of the best reviewed, not just animated films, but films of all time, and crushed it at the box office, taking in just shy of $500 million worldwide. How to Train Your Dragon was also co-directed by Dean DeBlois, who I somehow always mispronounce his name, who also directed the animated classic Lilo and Stitch and went on to direct the final two How to Train Your Dragon movies. And Chris Sanders, who directed the Harrison Ford film The Call of the Wild that was recently in theaters. Listen, I gotta tell you, I was shocked by how good this movie was, especially considering that on its surface, from the look of the trailers, it didn't look like anything special. Along with the two final films, there are a passionate group of film fans that list How to Train Your Dragon and the series up there with Toy Story as maybe the best animated trilogy of all time. And listen, I don't blame them, even though I personally prefer Toy Story. The next film celebrating 10 years feels like it just came out 3 or 4 years ago, potentially the greatest movie ever made about time travel that involves hot tubs. It's the John Cusack film Hot Tub Time Machine. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I personally consider Hot Tub Time Machine to be one of the most underappreciated and underrated comedies of all time. Now, people didn't respond to it nearly as well as I did, as it only pulled in a modest 63% on Rotten Tomatoes and only made an even more modest $64 million at the box office during its initial theatrical run. However, the movie was inexpensive to make and sort of found its audience on home video. Therefore, it got a, let's say, less than good sequel in 2015, minus John Cusack, who had the good sense to stay away from part 2, although I must admit it did have its moments. The synopsis for the film unsurprisingly reads like this. 4 pals are stuck in a rut in adulthood. Adam has just been dumped. Lou is a hopeless party animal. Craig is a henpecked husband. And Jacob does nothing but play video games in his basement. But they get a chance to brighten their future by changing their past after a night of heavy drinking in a ski resort hot tub results in their waking up in 1986. The cast for Hot Tub Time Machine was nothing short of stacked. Joining John Cusack in the core cast was Clark Duke, Rob Corddry, and The Office's Craig Robinson, all of whom were absolutely hilarious and had a fantastic chemistry together. The supporting cast was also great. That included Chevy Chase, Crispin Glover, the Winter Soldier himself, Sebastian Stan, Kick-Ass's Lindsay Fonseca, who, by the way, should be a major star, and I'm really not sure why she's not at this point, but whatever, and the incredible Lizzie Kaplan, who I may or may not have a long-standing celebrity crush on. Honestly, I know not everyone loves this movie like me, but why not help celebrate its birthday by checking it out? I think you'll be glad that you did. Okay, guys, that will do it for this episode of Movies Turning 10 this week. What did you guys think of How to Train Your Dragon and Hot Tub Time Machine? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know what you guys think. That'll do it for now. Thanks for being here. My name's John Campea, guys, and I'll see you next time. All right, guys, and those are the movies that are turning 10 years old this week. I can't believe it. I cannot believe that either of those films are 10 years old. I cannot believe that those films are 10 years old. Anyway, guys, what do you think about that little segment? By the way, we're thinking about maybe doing that, and maybe also the films turning 20 years old this week. Jump into the comments section and let me know what you guys think about that. Okay. With all that down now, guys, let's jump into the live questions that you guys have sent in, and we're going to get things started here right now with, where are we at? Dodger Ryan, 124 writes, "Hello, John. I was looking through my garage and found a box of old VHS tapes and found my Mortal Kombat Conquest series. Do you remember that show back in 1998? It was only one season, but it was a forgotten gem. I do not remember that one. Rob, do you remember that one?
I do not.
You do not remember? Yeah, I don't remember that one at all, like in the least. So I don't remember that one. So thank you for putting that on our radar, sir. We're going to keep our eyes open for it. Okay, next one up is, where are we at here? Throg, P.E. Hyprog writes, "I love you two. Picking albums is like picking kids, as you and I are the same age. But Purple Rain and Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back are two that I offer as the greatest albums of the 1980s. Throg also writes, "I'm sad my crew and I never made it to Hamilton from the Rock," that's Rochester, New York. "The devastating Body Rockers would have conquered Canadiana Kingdom of the North. I would have had video footage of you comparable to Robin Sparkles. Oh, the millions. There you go. Anyway, Rob, I know that I told people the other day that you would have been a big fan of Purple Rain. That was kind of your jam, was it not?
Dude, are you kidding me? I am a monster Prince fan, and I wanted to dress like Prince after I saw Purple Rain. I wanted to join the revolution. I wanted to purify myself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. I mean, I was such a Purple Rain fanatic. I mean, that album, I had an almost religious fervor for that record. The movie is actually surprisingly a good film. And I think Morris Day and Jerome, that was a star-making turn for them. You know, Prince might have not been the best thespian in the world, but man, he was cool in that movie. And of course, the album and the music is just legendary. I'm a huge fan. Would it surprise you to know that I own all of Prince's movies on Blu-ray?
I do. How many Prince movies are there besides Purple Rain?
Well, there's actually 3 feature films. There's Purple Rain, there's Under the Cherry Moon, and there's Graffiti Bridge, which is sort of a pseudo sequel to Purple Rain. Not great. Then there is the concert film Sign of the Times that I have a beautiful Japanese box set on Blu-ray. And there's been one that's recently released. It's basically a pseudo concert film, but it's pretty cool. And I can't get me enough Prince, let me tell you.
All right, let's move on here. Next one up comes us from Frankie G, who writes, follow-up on Robin Williams' lesser-mentioned films, Patch Adam, Jacob the Liar, Final Cut, August Rush. Not all great films, but he's always great in them. Yeah, I was mentioning the other day, somebody brought up, underappreciated. And the one I point people to, because long before he was doing other drama, there was The World According to Garp. And that is one that you really, really should check out. But those are some great suggestions as well. I like those ones as well, Frankie. All right, Edgar Navarro writes, my sister bought me a Bring on the Filthy t-shirt for my birthday. Oh, that's great. Please do send me a picture of you wearing it. I'd love to see it. And it came in today. Can't wait to go to the movies and see if anybody else is a fan of the show. Dude, thank you so much. It's so great for me to hear, and what a great sister doing that for you. But seriously, Edgar, email me, john@thejohncampeashow.com. I would love to see a picture of you wearing it. That would be great. Thank you so much for that, dude. All right, next up, Initial D's writes, hey, John, I just saw an article on We Got This Covered. I already know where this is going. That said, Marvel Studios has reportedly shut down all production indefinitely. How reliable is this, and should we be worried? LOL. Seriously, though, I could not believe there's Spice. I lost it. He also writes, this news comes our way via Charles Murphy of Murphy's Multiverse. According to The Insider, the studio has sent out an email to all crews revealing that the initial plan is to resume shooting in a month is no longer feasible. This isn't far-fetched, though. See, well, here's the interesting thing about that, is that this is called a spaghetti wall journalism, where, for instance, I'm not going to name names here. I'm not going to name names. But there was a site that reported a story back a while ago that said, exclusive, we can confirm that the Batmobile will be in the new Matt Reeves movie. What a lot of us in the circles I travel in refer to as spaghetti wall journalism, what that basically means is that, somebody just throwing something against the wall and see if something sticks. Of course the Batmobile was going to be in the new. That's not an exclusive. That's not breaking news. And no, that site never got any insider information. They just knew. It's like, look, I can run a story tomorrow. Guys, I have found out from my Disney insiders some big breaking stuff. Hold on to your seats, guys. Hold on to your seats. But I have found out in an exclusive breaking story here, and I can tell you definitively that the new X-Men that's going to be coming at some point to Marvel, the new X-Men, Charles Xavier is going to be in the new X-Men, ladies and gentlemen. I can repeat that.
No way.
Yes, I can repeat that. I can report that as definite fact. I have insiders. Well, of course, Charles Xavier. I didn't hear that from anybody. Of course, Charles Xavier. Listen, we all know that Marvel and productions is all ramped down and all that kind of stuff, and it may not be back online for a while. So again, it's not something I would pay any attention to, because it really is spaghetti wall journalism at this point. It's nothing we should be paying any attention to, at all whatsoever. Rob, you hear about stuff like this and you see stories like that. What's your response to them?
Come on, man. I mean, of course production's shut down. How is it not? It's shut down everywhere. That is where the industry is right now. It's not going to affect your life. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
And of course, they don't know if it's going to be back up and running in 30 days. Nobody knows. I mean, it's just one of those things. So I would pay no attention to it initial. All right. Next up, Mario writes, "Hey, John, this isn't a question, but I just want to say I love the Bring on the Filthy hoodie. Oh, I'm glad you got one too. That's awesome. I finally had the chance to order it. Wasn't sure if it would shrink or not, so I ordered one size bigger. You should make more hoodies just like that one." Well, listen, Ray and I have talked about, because every once in a while, some of the most ridiculous things get said on this show. And we often think, man, that would make a great t-shirt. I think we will, moving as we get a little bit further into the new year, I think you will see us start to put out more shirts and hoodies and hats with some of the things that are from the show. And so, yes, I do think you're going to see that. And thanks so much for getting a hoodie, Mario, and repping the show. I appreciate that, man, very much. And again, just like Edgar or Navarro say, please take a picture, email it to me. I would love to see it. All right. Crone Dog writes, "I watched Society for 4 days ago on Prime. Oh my God. Funny timing being recommended yesterday. It wasn't great, but it's a prime candidate for a remake. The story, bones, and ideas are there. It was just cheap with low production values and bad acting." Rob, did you ever see Society?
Dude, I own the box set that Arrow put out on Blu-ray.
No!
Oh, yeah. Beautiful box set with an unbelievable cover. Yeah.
Like the one
I'm
about...
a huge fan. Screaming Mad George's effects at the end, directed by Brian Usna. Come on, man. Although I have to say, to be honest, not a great movie. But the ending makes it all worthwhile.
Oh my God. I was just talking about how I thought somebody brought it up on the show. I thought I was the only guy in the world who actually saw that. But you actually have. Okay.
I wish I was in my house. I would get that box set that Arrow put out. Is beautiful.
Okay, good to know. I never would have guessed. Okay, moving on now. Kevin Lewis writes, "This might be a long shot, but what if studios put a cliffhanger version of first-run movies on VOD? They do acts 1 and 2 and remove the third act. Then they could make money with straight-to-streaming and provide full version release later in theaters." Oh, no, consumers would not stand for it.
I'd kill somebody, John.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, like, can you see any way in which something like that would actually work, or that the movie audience would actually, actually tolerate that? Because I can't think of any way the audience would tolerate that.
Dude, let me tell you a quick story. I went to an exhibitor's screening of First Blood, the Stallone movie.
Right.
They forgot to ship the final reel of the film.
I remember you telling that story before.
And I was sitting there with the exhibitors. I mean, these are jaded exhibitors, movie theater owners. You know, they have to watch every movie. People were so into the film, and suddenly it just ended. And the projectionist comes out and goes, even jaded exhibitors wanted to kill somebody. There's no way that a movie lover is going to put up with that. No way.
Yeah, it would be instantly revolted against. Instantly revolted against. There's no way people would tolerate it. It would not fly with audiences. No way, no how. I mean, hey, you're thinking outside the box, Kevin, and that's what you need to do. You need to think outside the box. And so good on you for trying to come up with some ideas, but yeah, that's why that one wouldn't work. 50 Shades writes, "I know I'm a bit late on this, but my favorite Star Trek sound effect is the door chime. It's actually my ringtone for text." And Rob, somebody actually wrote in the other day saying, "I'm surprised Rob didn't say the door sound for Star Trek," right?
No, people wrote to me and said, the whoosh, whoosh. Yes. I mean, that is a pretty, but also the chime too, when you hear that chime, especially in Next Generation when Picard says come, the door opens. Those are good ones as well. Those are the door, the swishing of the doors opening and closing on the Enterprise is definitely one. But you know what? I when you said the bridge noises, I had to hand it to you, tip my hat to you, sir, because that's just one of my favorite ambience. When people do those ambience videos on YouTube, which is like 10 hours of ambience from Blade Runner.
Yes.
I could listen to the ambience on the Enterprise bridge for the rest of my life.
It's a good one. It's a good ambient sound. All right, next one up. Suthius writes, "Hey, gents, thoughts on Awkwafina as an actress? I honestly never heard of her until 2 years ago when a friend told me she's a rapper. I've since only known her as an actress. Haven't seen The Farewell, but the few movies I've seen, I think she's talented." You know what? I never really thought much of her at all, to be honest with you. And then she was in that Ocean's 8, I think she was in, and she didn't really have a lot to do in it, so I didn't think anything good of her. I didn't think anything bad of her either. It wasn't until I saw her in Crazy Rich Asians, because she kind of steals the show. When she's on screen in Crazy Rich Asians, she kind of steals the show. And then I saw her in The Farewell, and I'm like, okay, she's got chops. She has legitimate chops, because she was really, really quite good in that. Rob, what are your thoughts on Awkwafina?
I do. The first time that she really made an impression on me, I liked Ocean's 8, but yes, I mean, she's as the sort of acerbic, hard-edged friend in Crazy Rich Asians. I thought she was great, and that was one of those star-making turns that it's like what Melissa McCarthy until she was in Bridesmaids. Once you see Bridesmaids, it's like, oh, okay, this woman's a star.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with Awkwafina in Crazy Rich Asians. She was really, really good. And also one of these characters that you just love when she was on screen too. So that's always important.
Yep. All right, next one up here is the Sock writes, what's the most heartbreaking scene of two good friends arguing, fighting? Also, Rob, are you disappointed by the new Warriors lineup, or are you really, really disappointed? Well, one question at a time. Let's talk about heartbreaking scenes of two good friends arguing and fighting. I'm trying. That's a very specific question that I don't know if I can think of one right off the top of my head.
I know. I'm trying to. Yeah.
Of two great friends arguing or fighting, I don't know. Again, that's one I would have to sit down and think about. Like, I can think of tons of movies where our friends argue. I mean, one really, really good one was the recent A Star Is Born, when Bradley Cooper and his older brother, played by Sam Elliott, Sam Elliott. That was really powerful. That one was a really good one. I don't know that I call it my best one, but that's one I can think of off the top of my head. What about you, Rob? Can you think of any off the top of your head?
And I can't. I mean, I can't really think of. I mean, the thing that comes to me the most, the thing that I think of, it's not really a fight, but it's Michael Corleone and his brother Fredo in Godfather 2. I knew it was you, Fredo. In terms, I don't know if that would be a fight, but it's at least he's expressing his disappointment. And then there's the scene where they see each other later in the film. I mean, that rift between the two brothers, which leads to a fatality, is one of the great heartbreaking sibling breakup scenes, I think, in any movie. That's the first thing that jumped to my mind. I don't know if it's exactly what he wanted to hear, but that's the first thing that came to my mind.
All right, next up here, we got Jasser, who writes, hey, John, I'm a big fan from Kuwait. Oh, thanks for writing in, man. A movie theater company in my country started a delivery service for concession snacks. Brilliant.
Oh, man.
Knowing that most of their money is made is selling concession snacks, do you think this is a good idea? Oh, my God. Oh, my God, that's the most brilliant idea ever. Dude, I'm serious. If I'm sitting at home watching a movie, because, Ann and I are going to watch Onward probably later. If I thought I could actually get on Uber Eats and say AMC Theaters was one of the options, and I could get some hot popcorn with butter, like delivered to my, like some actual movie theater butter delivered to my house while I'm sitting down and stuck at home watching a movie in a house, I would, all the monies would be gone. I would totally take advantage of that. I think that's a great idea. Rob, I don't know. What do you think? Dude, I think it's a fabulous idea.
The ArcLights sell these like apple sausage, I don't know, hot dog things. Man, I would totally order out for those. Send me 4 of them.
Because you can make an argument that I can make popcorn at home that tastes even better. Okay, maybe you can, but it's the familiarity of the movie theater popcorn. If I can be sitting and actually have the movie theater popcorn, I don't know. Personally, I think it's a wild idea. I think it's an absolutely wild idea. All right. Next one comes to us from Jason Riez, who writes, Bad Boys is currently at 419 million with the coronavirus effing up everything. Do you think Bad Boys could end up being the highest film of 2020 by the end of the year? Thanks. No, I don't think so. And I mean, thankfully, Bad Boys is one of those films that was able to pretty much finish out its theatrical run, so it didn't really get affected by this all that much. But no, I mean, look, I don't know if we're going to be back up and running next month or the month after that, but I do believe we're going to be, like, I can't imagine a scenario that we're not back up and running by October, November, stuff like that, when you put a lot of the big films will then be coming out. So no, I really don't think there's any chance that Bad Boys ends up being the number one box office film of the year, but I'm so thrilled for its success because it's a fun little movie. All right, Jason Riaz writes, Bad Boys. Oh, this is the same one. So same answer. I do not think it's going to be. I do not think it's going to end up being the number one movie of the year. All right. Henri Martins writes, huge fan of Knives Out, so took up your recommendation and watched Brick. Ended up hating it. LOL. The old-fashioned dialogue set in modern day felt gimmicky, in my opinion, similar to Leo's Romeo and Juliet. I actually really like that. But catching up on Brothers Bloom next, and I hope it's better. I'm actually not. I like Brothers Bloom. I'm not a huge Brothers Bloom fan, but Rob, I know you like Brick, right? So
I do. I thought Brick was really clever and interesting. And look, I understand that it is gimmicky, but I bought into the gimmick when I first saw it. I was like, how clever this is, how creative. It was just something I hadn't seen before, and I quite enjoyed it. So it worked for me.
All right, let's keep moving here. 50 Shades of Geek writes, even though I like Ahsoka Tano's character, it's an absolute disservice to cast anybody other than Ashley Eckstein to play the live-action version of Tano the Mandalorian Season 2. Thoughts? Completely disagree. 1,000% disagree. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Ashley Eckstein isn't wonderful and charming and delightful. Of course she is. But this is not an animation. This is a totally different thing than having an actress in a voice booth just doing a voice. It's a completely different thing. And live action acting is different from voice acting. That's why I think voice acting is highly underrated. I don't like the fact that they just give voice acting gigs to just big name stars instead of highly trained voice performers like an Ashley Eckstein. But also live action is different. So no, I understand there's a bunch of sentimentality attached to that because there are people who like this character, and because she's voiced by that, they want her to do it. But any more than it's a disservice that, the Warner Brothers Joker movie that just made $1 billion didn't have Mark Hamill in the lead role, because that didn't fit what they were going for. It's a different thing. Rob, how would you respond to something like that and somebody saying it should be the person who does the animated voice?
Well, I mean, that's like saying we've ever. I'm sure Ashley Eckstein is a delightful, beautiful person, but that doesn't mean they can act on film. Voice acting and acting in live action film or television is infinitely different. It's so different. I can't even begin to tell you how different it is, and that's all I can say. It's not the same thing at all.
All right. Next up, Plorkins McPlorksters writes, Netflix recommendation, a Spanish dystopian thriller called The Platform. It deals with social class inequity in an extremely interesting and original way. Think a more messed up Snowpiercer. Also, more messed up than Snowpiercer? Also, what are your thoughts on Patch Adams with Robin Williams? Well, we'll stick to the first part of your question there. Rob, it sounds like you have seen The Platform. What's the basic gist of this thing?
Well, imagine a prison, John, a prison that is vertical, and a platform starts at the top with all the food you could possibly want. So the people on the top get whatever they want, and then the platform lowers to each level, and you have to deal with what's left on the platform as it drops from platform to platform to platform. Ooh. And look, is the allegory a little heavy-handed? Perhaps. But as a weird sci-fi dystopian social commentary about haves and have-nots and literally the top 1%, you've got to see it. It's bonkers. And I think it dropped on Netflix a week ago, maybe this week. You've got to see it. I mean, it's a movie that will be talked about the next 10 years.
Interesting. All right. Well, it's on my radar now. I'm going to go watch it. Thanks for the recommendation, Plorkins. All right. Ryan Lohner writes, 4 seasons into Clone Wars, I have to say that if anyone deserves to be called a masturbatory fanatic character, it's Cad Bane. Ahsoka's actually just a jobber more than not, and pretty I always mispronounce this word, innocuous. Maybe she suddenly turns horrible in season 5. Again, I'm not going to get into an argument about Ahsoka Tano. Again, listen, I hate the character. I think the character sucks. Fine. There's a lot of people who love the character, and that's great. I have no problem with that. But I do got to say, as somebody who kind of thinks the character sucks, I got to say, Rob, it's funny. We often talk about how powerful a trailer is, right? How powerful a trailer is, because it can take something that I have no interest in, which is Westworld season 3, and suddenly you drop an incredible trailer and you're like, oh, now I kind of think I want to see Westworld season 3. Casting can do the same thing. Not necessarily on the same level, but I remember, even as somebody who does not like that character at all, I gotta say, when I heard that Rosario Dawson was going to be playing it, I'm not saying Rosario Dawson is the top 5 greatest actresses in the world, but the perfection of that casting. Like even I, the most salty, crusty guy in the world when it comes to this character, even I gotta say, I was like, wow, that's actually pretty damn perfect. Like I don't like using that term, Rob, when it comes to casting, because to me, there's also 20 or 30 other actors or actresses that can play a role and maybe even play it as well. But when I heard Rosario Dawson playing that character, I'm like, hey, I got to give it up. That's a freaking stroke of genius. I think it's great. I haven't had a chance to talk to you, but like, what do you think about that? And by the way, what has been confirmed is that she is going to be in this season, but I believe we have still not heard any confirmation from Lucasfilm or John Favreau or Rosario Dawson's reps themselves confirming that she's actually playing that character, but I'm not seeing anything saying it's not, so let's go with that for a minute. I think it's bloody brilliant, Rob. I gotta say, I think it's bloody brilliant. What do you think of it?
Well, me too. I mean, Rosario Dawson is a very capable actress. I really like her look. I mean, I just like the way she looks. And I think playing that character with her face, and I don't know how they're going to do the Ahsoka Tano, what are the Ahsoka, how they're going to do her head thing. Like, how's that going to look? But
well, they can do Twi'leks, they can do her,
Yeah, I know. I think she'll be great in that role. And I know there's a lot of Twitter people that somebody in her family, there was some controversy about things people said, and they were out in arms. They were coming out, they're sharpening their knives, going after her on Twitter, and I'm like, really? But okay. I think she's going to be great. I was very excited, like you said, about casting. You hear her cast in the role, I'm like, well, that's going to be, if nothing else, she'll be kick-ass in that part. And I'm into it because she's an older version of the character. So it's going to be great to see that.
Yeah, and and she's just a great actress, and anyway, it's great. Anyway, Ben Ellman writes, I'm a big Star Trek fan and have seen all the movies and many episodes of all the shows, but never watched a whole old Star Trek show start to finish. Really? Now I'm finally watching Next Gen. Next Gen is the old one? Anyway, now I'm finally watching Next Gen from start to finish. What is your favorite episode from Next Gen? Thanks. Woo! Next Gen was just fantastic. I remember my mom being we watched the debut of Star Trek The Next Generation, something at Faraway Point, or what was the name of the episode again?
Encounter at Farpoint.
At Farpoint, which actually ultimately might be the weakest episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, but then the finale brought it full circle back to the opening, but in a really, really brilliant way. There is so much going on. I mean, whether it's Locutus of Borg, or whether it's the impact that Picard and Worf had on the ascension of the new Emperor for the Klingons, whether it's, I don't know, the one episode they did that I thought was really carrying on at that time, the Star Trek tradition of social commentary was, remember the one, I can't remember the name of the episode, Rob, when they came across that race where they were all one gender? And they found out that one of the guest characters actually leaned towards one gender than the other instead of being, I mean, they did a lot of stuff like that, but I might have to go with the whole Locutus Borg, because that one was like one of the first. They didn't do many to be continued episodes. Star Trek Next Generation didn't do many to be continued, and that's one of the first ones that I thought of. But what about you? You got a favorite Next Gen episode?
Well, I mean, there's some great, obviously, Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2, like you just mentioned, are great. Yesterday's Enterprise is obviously a fan favorite. But one of my favorites is from season 2, and it's called The Measure of a Man. And it's what the whole Picard series now is pretty much based on, where Data is put on trial as to whether or not he is an android or a synth, is considered a sentient being, or is he actually property of Starfleet? And Picard has to argue. He says there's a great moment, and he goes, "We're here to seek out new life." Well, there it sits. And the character of Bruce Maddox, played by the actor Brian Brophy, is introduced. That's a great episode. One of my favorite, I think, unsung episodes is a third season episode called The Defector. That is a Romulan episode that gives you a lot of insight into how the Romulans conduct their business, which also plays into the new Picard series. But there are many great episodes of Next Generation.
Yeah, it's good on you. But if that's your definition of the old Star Trek, keep going back, because you still got the original series to go. All right, Ben Ellman also writes, with the conversation last week, one of the most memorable Star Trek sounds to me is the communicator beep. Oh, absolutely. From the original series, in a time like the hopeful future of Trek is something we can all look forward to and hopefully become reality. Also, the tricorder sound, the classic tricorder.
Yep.
Is another one, which also made an appearance on the Picard series, by the way.
But the communicator chirp.
Yeah,
the communicator chirp.
When they would that classic Motorola Razor flip action that Kirk would do, like that was great. I mean, that was another good one, Ben. Well said. All right, Mandalorian of Gondor writes, of these three directors, which of their filmography would you buy, rent, and never see? Nolan, Villeneuve, and Tarantino. Oh my God. Thanks for all you do, John, and stay safe. Hope to say hi to you again in an AMC Dolby once this is all over. Well, thank you for that, Mandalorian. Dude, that is a Sophie's choice. I mean, okay. Oh God, this hurts to say this. Buy Nolan, rent Tarantino, never see Villeneuve. Now listen, if we're talking about their filmographies as they are right now, then that's the way I've got to go. Ask me that question again, though, in 12 years. Once, Denis Villeneuve has had like 4 or 5 more films added to his filmography, and we've seen Dune, and we've seen whatever else he's got to do in the road. But right now, Nolan and Tarantino just have the bigger, better filmography. So I hate saying it, but I would go buy Nolan, rent Tarantino. Oh, never see Denis. Oh, that hurts. But again, ask me the question again in 12 years. Rob, you got to do it. How does it fall into?
It pains me to say this, but I'm going to go with you because, I might even, no, I think I would buy Nolan because he has movies that resonate with me on a deeper level, but Tarantino's films are so monumentally entertaining, and Denis Villeneuve's movies are not like Prisoners makes me want to put a gun in my mouth. And as much as I like, I mean, I love Arrival, I love Blade Runner, and he's made some great movies. I think ultimately I just get more entertainment value from their overall oeuvre from Nolan and Tarantino.
All right. It's a Soviet choice. Don't want to get rid of any of them. Just be clear. All right. Anthony Lucalano writes, Pete Cronshaw, I think I might have just finished watching one of my favorite films of all time, and I don't say that lightly. What David Lean did with Lawrence of Arabia is positively Olympian. Listen, I have been, Rob, I'm always talking Lawrence of Arabia. That movie to me, it's the movie that made me develop a lifelong fandom of Peter O'Toole. All the way from that to my favorite year. I mean, and Stardust, by the way, he's also in Stardust, my recommended film. It is so unbelievably a word that is tragically overused, but epic. Lawrence of Arabia is epic. And one of the, if not the, I would argue, one of the greatest feats of cinematography I've ever seen. It's just gorgeous and sweeping and mind-blowing. And anyway, Rob, just your quick thoughts on Lawrence of Arabia.
Dude, I mean, Lawrence of Arabia is one of the reasons that cinema was invented. And, if you haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia, you do yourself a favor and watch it on the biggest screen with the loudest sound system possible, if only to hear Maurice Jarre's score. I mean, it's what can you say? It's just one of the great cinematic experiences you'll ever have. It's epic. It defines epic filmmaking.
Absolutely agree. All right, next up, Anthony Lucolano also writes, it was like watching Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling. I've got no other way of describing it. I completely agree. Sorry about the typo at the start of my Lawrence Super Chat. Moved it over from Facebook. Also, I'm currently watching The Great Escape. That's another good one. Anthony is one of the viewers who's been taking this time that we've got stuck at home, really catching up on a lot of the classics, including the Westerns and all that kind of stuff. I'm so glad you saw Lawrence of Arabia, and going into this Great Escape, you're also going to like that one a lot. But Lawrence of Arabia is just, you guys know I've been saying forever, it's one of the films in my top 10 of all time. It's absolutely wonderful. Lady J writes, hey John, just wanted to recommend The Pianist. Oh, I like The Pianist very much. As a movie to watch during this lockdown, it's one of those movies for me I can watch over and over. Amazing acting and beautiful cinematography. Adrian Brody's best performance to date. I have spoken. Oh, it absolutely is his best. He won an Academy Award for it. He won Best Actor for that, and gave us one of the most memorable, but also risking a Me Too moment in Oscar history, where when he came up on stage, it was Halle Berry who presented the award for Best Actor at the Oscars that year, because the previous year she had won Best Actress for Monsters Ball. I believe it was the year before she won the Academy Award for Monsters Ball. So, as was tradition, she presented the award the next year. Adrian Brody came up on stage, took the trophy, and then took Halle Berry in his arms and dipped her and kissed her right on stage. Now, it later came out that they had spoke in advance, say, hey, if I win, I'm going to do this and create a moment. Would you be cool with that? And she's like, yeah, do that. So it wasn't as spontaneous as a scene, but it was one of the great Oscar moments ever, I thought. But Rob, you saw The Pianist. Yes, your thoughts?
I'm a big fan, and I did love that moment. I mean, look, why not? When you win an Oscar, that's the kind of thing that people should remember. Especially Halle Berry. Wow, who wouldn't want to do that? I saw Swordfish.
Yeah, Swordfish. That's another great story about how, what was it, John Travolta? I can't remember if it was John Travolta or Hugh Jackman that talked to her, because Halle Berry, it was the first time she'd ever done a topless scene.
Yeah,
I believe was Swordfish, and she tells the story about she wasn't gonna do it, and then it was either Hugh Jackman or John Travolta. I can't remember one of the two. I think it was Hugh Jackman actually talked her into it, like artistically, why it would be really good, and so she did it. And yeah, not the best movie, but as a kid, I'm like, yep, I'll never forget that scene.
She got paid too. She got paid.
Oh yeah, she did. And besides being an Academy Award winning actress, like also one of the most stunningly male or female beautiful creatures to ever walk the face of the earth.
Oh, I mean, when she comes out of the water and Die Another Day in that bikini, emulating what Ursula Andress looked like. Man, oh man, what a stunningly beautiful woman she is.
The world stopped spinning. All right, Anthony Lucolano writes, I'm planning on watching Fritz Lang's Metropolis and the original The Magnificent Seven after The Great Escape again. Films I haven't previously seen before. Listen, Magnificent Seven is, of course, one of the original remakes, right? I mean, it was a Western version of The Seven Samurai. And you'll see but then it in and of itself became an absolute trendsetter for movies as well in the North American thing, having its own remake not so long ago with Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington in a Magnificent Seven remake. So yeah, go watch it and enjoy, man. All right, Christopher Jenks writes, Rob, I found the movie you recommended, Stone Cold, on YouTube, so I gave it a watch, and I have to say thanks. As you put it was truly badass. And Rob, people taking your recommendations. Going to watch Brian Bosworth.
I got to tell you, I hadn't seen it in a while, and somebody sent me a link and said it's on YouTube, and I put it on, and I was like a half an hour in before I was like, I got work to do, man. But, man, I stand by my recommendation because, boy, that movie's fun, and Lance Henriksen should have won an Academy Award for that performance.
All right, Academy Awards. All right, Aha writes, Yo, John, when the cinemas eventually reopen, do you have any advice to offer on giving tips as in money, to theater employees to further help these businesses get back on track? What would be of most benefit? Well, I mean, it's two different things, helping the business get back on track and then tipping the actual individuals working in those theaters. That's two different things. Both laudable, both very good ideas. But with the actual staff themselves, it's a good question. because I love the idea. I think you're right. I think, you know what? You just put the idea in my head. I think when I go to the movie theater for the first time, gotta remember a lot of these, and it's not just kids that work at these theaters. You know, one of my favorite guys at the AMC Burbank 16, Rob, is this older dude named Carl. He's been there forever. Like since we were working at AMC out of the converted storage closet, he was there. Just a delightful, wonderful guy, being one of the guys to take tickets as people go in. Just a super dude. But it's him, a lot of kids as well, people who are out of jobs right now. I think what I'm going to do, and try to figure out a way to do it without looking like a dick, is I think I'm going to go like I'm going to the strip club, Rob. Bring a ton of bills. Bring a ton of bills. Not that I go to the strip club a lot. Bring a ton of bills.
I was going to say, whoa.
And go in and like when a kid takes my ticket, give him a couple bucks. Like, I mean, it just to say, number one, thank you for doing your job and being here. And also a way to say, man, that must suck. You were probably out of work for a couple of months. And hey, man, like me giving some kid $2, that doesn't gonna mean anything. But guess what? If 50 other people that night do that too, $100 can mean a lot to a kid, right?
That's a great, dude. That's a really good idea.
I love what Aha just said. I think that's a great suggestion.
I just hope that I'll have those bucks to give away in a couple weeks.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Do we have a couple extra bucks to do it? But
yeah, it's we'll see.
But hey, listen, but seriously, guys, it's a great idea. How to do it, I don't know. You don't want to embarrass them and you don't want to come off as a douche knuckle, but I mean, just say, hey, thanks. Just like very quickly as they take your ticket, hand them a couple, just say, thank you for doing your job, man. And then just move on. And then maybe when you go up and get your popcorn, slip the girl at the counter a couple extra bucks. Say, hey, thanks for helping me have a good night out here at the theater tonight. I mean, I'm not saying that should be a regular practice, but when we're all coming back, it might not be a bad idea. I like the idea in principle. I like the idea. Okay, Luke1234 writes, which Star Wars movie did you see the most in theaters? I hate saying it, but The Phantom Menace. I saw that movie 17, 18, 19 times in theaters for a couple of reasons. Not because I loved it, but because at the time when that came out, I was working in the visual effects industry. And it is no movie has ever come out that pushed the world of visual effects forward more than that movie did. Other movies have come out, obviously, since then that have been better visual effects, but no movie ever took where visual effects was in the industry and heaved it forward like The Phantom Menace did. And so me and everybody that worked at the CGI company, and there was only 4 of us. We were a very small company. But we would go, it would be like 1:00 in the afternoon, Rob, and we go, staff meeting? Yeah, staff meeting. Staff meeting meant let's go over to the $4 theater and go watch The Phantom Menace again, just because we wanted to watch the visual effects. It was insane. But yeah, I ended up seeing that like 17, 18, 19 times in theaters. Which one did you see? I'm going to guess Empire was the one you saw most in theaters, but which one did you see most in theaters?
No, Empire Strikes Back, by far. I saw it 26 times first run. Every single time I saw it at the late lamented United Artists UA 150 Theater on 6th and Blanchard in downtown Seattle. And a theater they blew up. My favorite movie theater in the world. And they just destroyed it.
Yeah, I remember the day they did that and you lamenting on the show about that. That was really unfortunate. All right. Guys, we move on here. Baby Boy 8603 writes, I had a pretty good weekend catching up on some movies I've never seen before. I just watched the Godfather trilogy. Nice. Casino, beautiful. Goodfellas, and Gangs in New York. Man, there's a theme to the movies you watched this weekend, Baby Boy. All great ones. All fantastic. And how about Daniel Day-Lewis and Gangs in New York as Bill the Butcher? So good, but you just got to see some of the greatest films ever made, all in one weekend. You just spoiled yourself, by the way, because next weekend's not going to be as good as that, but that's a great one. Good use of your time, Baby Boy. Well done. Jack Hamilton writes, will the requirement of watching Disney Plus shows for future Doctor Strange 2 and future Marvel films backfire on Marvel? I don't believe they're actually going to do that. I believe, because listen, Kevin Feige's already proven he's not an idiot. He's not an idiot. He's not going to do what ultimately led to the comic book industry having some big problems, having too many issues out where you had to be reading that in order to be able to read this, and that kind of backfired on them. What I think is going to happen is this, Rob, and tell me if you think I'm crazy, but I honestly think it's going to be one of those things where you'll get a little something more out of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness if you've watched WandaVision. But I also think they're going to do Doctor Strange 2 in such a way that anything you need to know, they'll make it very, very clear in Doctor Strange 2, and you'll be fine. So I can't see them at all being so stupid as saying, because they're not going to have moviegoers going into theater watch Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness going, I have no idea what was going on because they didn't watch the Disney Plus show. They would never be that stupid. How do you see it?
I completely agree. Now, that's not to say you will be rewarded if you watch those shows. There's probably going to be, but yeah, I mean, they're going to make it so you don't have to have watched those shows. But I think they are going to make them, all tie in. But you're right. It's just like you don't. I mean, obviously, it would be better if you saw Infinity War before you saw Endgame. But the Marvel movies, for the most part, you can enjoy them without being slavishly devoted to the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Guardians of the Galaxy worked if you hadn't seen another Marvel movie. Captain Marvel worked pretty much. I mean, you met Coulson and Fury in that movie in the 90s. I mean, they all kind of work, and they're designed to work that way, and I don't think that's going to change. But if you've seen them all, it's a much richer and more rewarding experience.
Yeah, like I know a couple of people, including Aaron Cummings, who had hardly seen any of the MCU movies. So I gave her a list of 6 to watch, going in 6 or 7 to watch. And now she's watched them all now, but we were just about to get Endgame hitting theater. I gave her a list of 6 or 7 to watch. And she went into Endgame, had no problem following the movie. None.
Right.
She didn't watch. Now, they're all connected. Yeah, they're all connected. But just because they're connected doesn't mean they're prerequisites. They're not prerequisites one into the other. So she had seen 6 or 7 of the films, watched Endgame, no problem following along completely easily and watching everything. Now, to your point, Rob, those of us who have seen everything, yeah, we got a little bit more depth and a little bit more richness out of watching Endgame because we understood every single reference that was going on and understood the depth of the meaning of certain things a little bit more. But Aaron Cummings, having only seen a few of the MCU movies, had no problem at all following along. And that's the way they've done things. That's the way they're going to continue. You do not have to watch WandaVision in order to be able to go in and watch Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and being able to keep up and understand what's going on. If you watch, I have no doubt if you watch WandaVision, you're going to get a little bit more out of it. But if you don't, you're going to be perfectly fine going in. That's the way they've done it. That's the way they'll continue to do it. I have no doubt. Because only so many people subscribe to Disney Plus. Right. Only so many people. Right? So, yeah, they're not going to shoot themselves in the face. They're not, and it would be shooting themselves in the face, Jack. It absolutely would be. So they're not going to do that. All right, Anthony Lucolano writes, I finished watching The Great Escape, and I really liked it. Going to start watching Fritz Lang's Metropolis in a second. Rob, I know that's a film that holds a special place in your heart. You love that Metropolis movie, do you not?
Dude, Metropolis to me is ground zero of, I mean, people might go back further and say George Méliès's Trip to the Moon, but I think that Metropolis is really the first most substantial science fiction film, and even though it was made in 1927, it remains one of the, I think, great science fiction films of all time. And you need to see it. And I would say to audiences, if you don't dig silent movies, you could watch the 80s version with Giorgio Moroder, who did a really cool sort of an electronic techno soundtrack along with some performers of the day who recorded music for it. If you're a science fiction movie fan, you have to see Metropolis.
And Rob, on that note, we've taken you a little bit over time. We know you've got work to do, so we're going to let you go here. But in the meantime, brother, where can people find you and all your adventures online?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, and of course find me on my YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations, the show about something.
Thanks a lot for that, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great one, man. All right, guys, we now keep pushing forward, and it's always great having Rob here. I every day, I feel like I look up at the clock. It's like, shit, now we got to let him go. Anyway, but we got to let him get to his stuff. So let's keep right on rolling with your questions, guys. We still have a bit of time left here, and we're going to start things off here with Michael Jones, who writes, John, on open mic on Saturday, you looked up Jumanji Next Level box office and said it had made $754 million. According to Box Office Mojo, it made $796 million. Sorry, I'm anal when it comes to box office. Well, it might have been when I looked it up. They might not have registered that full weekend number. The point was, it's still, it still made a lot less than the other one. But still, no matter how much less it made than the other one, it's made an insane amount of money. It has made an insane amount of money. And so what the topic was that Michael is talking about was, it got brought up, does this guarantee that they will make a third film with The Rock and Kevin Hart and Jack Black and Gillian Anderson, not Gillian Anderson. It's, why am I forgetting? Anyway, whatever. I still don't think it guarantees it, because it at the end of the day, it's going to make, it's making less than the first one did. Plus, I thought it wasn't as good as the first one. Plus, The Rock and Kevin Hart and Jack Black and getting all these characters, all these actors and performers together is really, really difficult to do and expensive. I just said, I think when a movie makes over $700 million like this Jumanji did, you've got to consider making another one. You have to. I just don't think it's an ironclad lock guarantee that they do another one. That's all I'm saying. I think there's a very good chance that they do another one. I just think when you consider it wasn't as good as the previous one, it made a little bit less than the previous one, and you consider the schedules of all these people, I just don't think it's a guarantee. Now, if this thing had made over $1 billion, yeah, then I think that might guarantee it, but it didn't, and so I still think there's a very good chance. I just don't think it's a guarantee. But thanks for updating on the numbers on that, Michael. Appreciate that. All right, Slim Trav writes, where did Slim Trav go? Hold on a second. Slim Trav writes, think a Venom and Deadpool crossover will happen? No, I don't. I don't think it will. It'd be interesting, but I don't think it will. Although it would be interesting. Matthew Phillips writes, do you think a movie like Barbed Wire should be made today? Silly, sexy fun is still in, right? I mean, it's not about whether you should, but it's whether would it be successful today. And that's the bigger question. It's not about whether you should. It's like, oh, is that off limits to do? I don't think it's a matter of a movie like Barbed Wire being off limits to do. I think you can still do movies and shows like that. You can. The question is, could you do it and would it be successful? And I'm not so sure about that. There are certain movie trends and things that are done in one era that work in an era that don't necessarily work in another. So I'm not really so sure. Can you do it? Yeah. Would it work? I got my question marks about that. James McLeod writes, how will this affect DVD and Blu-ray production? Not really sure. But listen, DVD and Blu-ray production are already ramping down. These are disappearing industries. Rob and I have talked about that. We've looked at the numbers and statistics, and fewer companies are making Blu-ray stuff now and blah, blah, blah. But how will this affect it? I don't think it's going to affect it much at all, to be honest with you, moving forward, either positively or negatively. I don't think it's going to. The physical media stuff is in decline, and it just will keep declining. Next up, Bruno Yon writes, are you all caught up on Better Call Saul Season 5? No, I'm not. What are your thoughts? For me, it's almost just as tense and engaging watch as Breaking Bad. I am up to Season 4. I believe I finished Season 4 and never got around to 5 yet. I do intend on doing that, and I am impressed with Better Call Saul. I mean, it's not as good as Breaking Bad, but I thought when they were doing a spinoff of Better Call Saul, especially considering it was more of a prequel than anything else, it jumps around, but it's really more of a prequel than anything else. I didn't think it was necessarily a good idea, but I've been impressed by how much I've liked the show. Russell Amador writes, hey, John, during this past weekend, my girlfriend and I decided to revisit some movies from the past she hadn't seen yet. We saw Prisoners, gut punch of a movie. I love it. Brilliant. Speaking of Denis Villeneuve. I forgot how amazing that one was. Also saw Hell or High Water, as per Harloff, which was badass. Not sure how I missed that one. Yeah, Hell or High Water. On Friday, the movie recommendations was done by Christian. I had Christian Harloff on here to give his movie recommendations, and one of them was the magnificent Jeff Bridges, Chris Pine, Hell or High Water. That movie is freaking awesome. Just awesome. I remember walking out of the theater going, oh, I actually saw, I think me, Harloff, and Schnepp. I think the three of us all went to go see that movie at this, like, together. And I remember we walked out going, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, it's so good. I'm glad you had a chance to watch that, Russell. All right. Raphael's Creative Style writes, exciting news. The sequel to the awesome Korean zombie film Train to Busan, called Peninsula, as in the entire Korean peninsula, is coming in August. New characters and more expansive story. I can't wait. And they're still saying they're doing a North American remake of it. They are still apparently moving forward with doing a North American remake of it, which I am fascinated to see. Because, like, again, you know, my favorite cop film of all time is Infernal Affairs, the Asian film, but Martin Scorsese did a remake of it, and it won the Academy Award for Best Picture at the Academy Awards in The Departed. So I'm excited to see that. As far as a straight sequel, we'll see. I'll watch it, but I mean, Train to Busan is great. Tim Duplisa writes, shut-in ideas, Clue, Final Destination series, and Up. Well, yeah, Up, obviously. Clue is an interesting one to get caught up on, and the Final Destination series, which also, I believe, just turned 10 or 20. I think Final Destination just turned 20. I think the first Final Destination movie turned 20. I think it just celebrated an anniversary last week or something like 10 or 20, I can't remember, but it just celebrated one of those. Cleric John Preston writes, hi, John and Rob. I'm a huge Nolan fan. With all these projects being delayed and being that Tenet's budget will probably be around $300 million with publicity, what are the chances of the movie being pushed from the July 17th date? Thanks. At this point, pretty high. Because, listen, there is a chance that the theaters are going to be open again by July 17th. The problem is, right now, they don't know that. And right now is when they would be going into high gear for promoting the film and doing all the marketing for their film. And if you can't do the marketing for the film, you can't release the film. So I think even though there is a chance movie theaters may be open again by July 17th, the fact of the matter is they can't spend, $100 million on marketing right now when you don't even know for sure that you can debut it. And without the marketing push, you're not going to release the movie without the marketing push. So I think it's probably a pretty good chance that movie gets delayed. I think there's a pretty good chance that movie gets delayed. All right. Ryan Trabuco writes, hey, John. Hello, Ryan. Just want to say thank you to you, Rob, and everyone at the show for helping to entertain so many of us who are having a rough time. 4 of my close friends have tested positive for COVID. Oh, that sucks, man. In the last week, 3 in the last 48 hours. It has been tough. Well, yeah, it is. You know what? Honestly, Ryan, and thank you so much for writing that in. Rob and I were just talking before the show started today. Because we get on about 20 minutes before the show starts, and we chat. I set up the camera shots. We get the audio levels checked, and I'll make sure the stream is working, and blah 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 blah. Because it doesn't always work, And we talked about how, both Rob and I have received a lot of emails from you guys, and who have said things like what you just said, Ryan. And I think even I underestimate that when we're dealing with crap like this BS we're having to deal with right now, and some people have to deal with it on a much more serious level than we do, you forget how valuable a sense of normalcy is. You forget how valuable that is. And, I was telling Rob, I said, even just, I can only speak for myself, but for me, just doing the show feels incredibly cathartic, and what's a better word than that? Almost therapeutic. I don't know. There's just something for me that even doing the show, I wake up at 5, whatever, and I just get into my routine of doing the show and then doing the show. And just for those hours, just being able to feel normalcy, because that's what I normally do every day, right? And then hearing from a lot of you guys who are like, hey, in the midst of all the BS going on, having just a couple of hours every day that we can do what we normally do, watch the John Campea Show and participate, with the film fan community online and discussions and stuff like that. There's something that's really, again, cathartic, therapeutic about that. And I just really enjoy it. I've come to value it and appreciate it even more. So I have to thank all you guys for allowing me as an individual to have this sense of normalcy that was really helping for me to get through the days and get through all this BS that we're going through. And if the show being here can also help some of you guys achieve that as well, then that's awesome. And it's just another great thing about the movies. It's another great thing about the movie fan community, and it's awesome. So thank you so much for your kind words, Ryan. Thanks for being here and contributing to all of us feeling a little bit more normal as we're going for that. And of course, thank you for your tip as well for contributing to the show. But yeah, it's that sense of normalcy, man, and it's great. And thank you for being a part of that. All right, next up, Anthony Lucalano writes, just finished watching Fritz Lang's Metropolis, and wow, what a visual marvel that film was. A film years ahead of its time. Some people would argue, Anthony, I think I've heard Rob say, it wasn't a movie that was years ahead of its time. It was a generation ahead of its time. And it really was. And it's too bad Rob's not here to see your thoughts on that one. Anthony then writes, I'm planning on watching the original The Magnificent Seven tomorrow and Breakfast at Tiffany's the day after that. I'm Breakfast at Tiffany's. It has been a while since I got caught up on all the classics, but Breakfast at Tiffany's was one of the last ones that I got. It was years ago, but Breakfast at Tiffany's was one of the last ones that I got. I guess I can take the headphones off now since Rob's not here. Breakfast at Tiffany's was one of the last films that I did my final push on and got caught up on. And it is so freaking delightful. I love Breakfast at Tiffany's. And it's weird because it's like, that's one of the classics I just kept putting off because it does not look like it's a movie for me. I thought it was totally delightful. So I hope you enjoy them, man. All right. Raymond Verrata writes, after New Mutants, Flash and Black Adam have been promised forever ago. Flash is supposed to shoot in April. Black Adam is supposed to shoot in July. More from development hell. $6 billion Man started with Jim Carrey and now with Mark Wahlberg. And listen, that was forever ago. That Jim Carrey to Mark Wahlberg. Oh, a second. Somebody's sticking their nose in. No, hey, no, you never interrupt, honey. What's going on? Oh, Ann wants to come in and say hello, everybody. We've got a wild Ann Campea sighting going on. Here's Ann. Hello, baby. Ann, thank you for coming in. Social distancing doesn't exist in this house. Thank you for coming in to say hi. How's work going? Okay. You do that. I'll see you when you get back. Love you, baby. Wild Ann Campea sighting, ladies and gentlemen. Wild Ann Campea sighting. Anyway, yes, we are definitely going to see Flash put back again, Black Adam push back again. It's just, listen, from a schedule, there are more important issues. There are definitely more important issues, but we're talking about this issue right now. The scheduling for all this stuff is going to become a bloody nightmare. Because as this gets pushed, now there are other things that were supposed to be happening later. Now that's going to it's going to be an absolute nightmare for a lot of these studios trying to get all this stuff back up and running again. And those are definitely some of them, Raymond. Absolutely. Phil Corvelli writes, hey, John and Rob. Unfortunately, Rob's not here anymore right now. To John, I know you say you don't generally watch anime, but I highly recommend you give Castlevania a chance. Actually, I've watched Castlevania. I just finished watching season 2. I really like season 1. I did a review of season 1 on my channel back when it came out because like season 1 was only like 4 episodes. Then it took me forever to watch season 2, and I just finished season 2 like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Season 2 was better than season 1, I think, in my personal opinion. Now, Anne, who just walked out, Anne is already about halfway through season 3. I haven't started season 3 yet, but I do plan on watching season 3 because I liked 1 very much and I liked season 2 even better. So I will get caught up on season 3. Oh, believe that. I will get caught up in season 3. All right, guys, just got a few minutes more. Lowell writes in, over under 50% with Wonder Woman 84, Trevor and Fast 9 Han both do a better job of explaining how those characters survived than Rise of Skywalker's Emperor. Oh, 50% is low, man. I'll go 85%. I will go 85%. Neither Trevor will show up in Wonder Woman 4. It's like, how are you here? I don't know. And Han's not going to be, Han, we thought you were dead. Yeah, me too. Don't know why I'm not. Yeah, no, I don't see either of that happening, lol. I will take the over on 50% that both of those movies do a better job explaining their return than Rise of Skywalker did. All right, Star Wars Rocks writes, hey, John, 1 day left until the UK gets Disney Plus. I cannot wait. And it couldn't come at a better time. Especially with everybody being hunkered down at home so much, it could not come at a better time. It's really too bad that you guys had to wait this long to get it. But hey, at least you're getting it now, and it gives you an entire library of content to keep yourselves busy for a while. So I'm glad you guys are finally getting that. Just Your Average Joe writes, said this before, this is unprecedented and there's no model to track this. $90 the Mayweather fight at 5 million buys is nothing compared to being quarantined and releasing a huge movie IP like Wonder Woman 84. Do it now while there's no social gathering. I just think you're incorrect. I think, and I could be wrong, by the way, Average Joe. I could be wrong. I'm just telling you from my personal point of view. I think there is nothing to prove that. I think that's speculation on your part. But then again, everything that you and I are doing right now is speculation. So that's fair. But that's wild speculation. People just don't buy. The number of people who actually buy home video. Listen, and what are you going to charge for it? What are you going to charge for it? No pay-per-view has ever had 5 million home purchases before at any price. It's never happened. So what dollar value do you assign? Do you charge $20 for it? Okay. Well, now to make $800 million, right? To make $800 million, you need how many buys? 20 million? You need 4 times the record. 4 times the record for home buys at $20 a buy just to get to that $800 million mark. It's just not realistic. That's just not how the market for VOD works. And we can sit here and speculate saying everybody will do it. No, they won't. So then what do? Do you charge $30 for it? Well, now you don't need 20 million purchases. You need a few less, but how many people are actually going to pay $30 for it? How many people will actually pay $40 for it? Again, what I go back to, Just Your Average Joe, is this. Trust in the greed of the studios. Trust in their greed. And they put millions of dollars into studying this, analyzing this, researching it. If the studios thought for 1 second, with all of their data and all of their studies and all of their highly educated analysis and all that stuff, if the studios thought for one moment that they could make that kind of money by doing it, they would do it like that. But these companies who have sunk millions of dollars into data analysis and trends and all that kind of stuff, and you get Charles Roven saying it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. It will not work. That's what you got them saying. It will not work. And from all the reports we're hearing about the early releases of Onward and The Hunt and Invisible Man, not doing all that great. And now you could make the argument Wonder Woman's a different story. And you're right. Wonder Woman is a different story. It would definitely do better than, say, Onward has or Invisible Man or The Hunt. It would, but it would not do well enough. And again, I go back to trust in the greed of the studios. They want our money. And if they thought doing it this way would get them our money, they would do it in a heartbeat. They would do it in a heartbeat. But they haven't. So but then again, Just Your Average Joe, I can't prove that because, like Rob and I were talking about earlier, we haven't yet had that first penguin dive into the water. And that's one of the things I would be fascinated to see. If one of these movies like Wonder Woman took that dive into the water, became the first movie, to a big, high-profile project like that, to dive into the water and take that chance, it'd be interesting to see. And so all I can do is offer my speculation that it would get killed. And all you can do is offer your speculation that you think everybody would buy it. And we'll never really know which one of us is right and which one of us is wrong. But I gotta side with the studios on this. I just think if the studios thought they could make money on it, they would do it. And they completely don't believe they would make money on it. And that's with highly trained, highly educated, highly experienced people doing millions of dollars of data analysis and everything. They say it wouldn't work. But maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're wrong. It's going to be interesting. At some point, Average Joe, at some point, one of these movies will try it. One of these movies will try it. And I'm very curious to see what happens with Trolls World Tour. Granted, again, that's not a Wonder Woman. I understand that. It's not. But I am going to be very curious to see what happens with Trolls World Tour because I'm guessing it's not going to do a lot either. But we'll see. We will see. Time will tell, my friend. It's a great thought, and let's see what happens as we move forward. All right, just a couple more questions left, guys. Lowell writes, over under 20% Taskmaster is the new Black Widow, or in the new Black Widow, will not only be a woman, but will be Melina Vostok. What just happened is one of my favorite films to watch. Is Melina Vostok, you have to forgive me, I don't know. Is that Rachel Weisz? Because that has been a theory going around that Rachel Weisz will actually end up being Taskmaster. And that's possible. I would go under 50%, so I would think it's not likely, but I'll go over 20. So I would go put in the 25% range. So I'll take over 20, but I still don't think it'll happen. I would take under 50. All right, last question of the day, guys, because we're almost at our time. I got to keep the show under 2 hours or else YouTube doesn't render it properly. Anyway, the best Donald writes, my underrated movie for people to watch is Outlander from 2008 starring Jim Caviezel, Sophia Myles, John Hurt, and Ron Perlman. It's not the best movie ever made, but damn, it's a damn fun ride. Is that the one? Forgive me if I don't remember right. Is that the one where the dude, they crash land in like Viking Earth and they have to figure out, he has to hunt down the monster? Hold on a second. Outlander 2008. Let me just make sure it's the one I'm thinking about. I think it is. During the reign of the yes, it is this one. During the reign of the Vikings, Canaan, a man from a far-off world, crash lands on Earth, bringing with him an alien predator known as the Morwen. Although both a man and monster are seeking revenge for violence committed against them, Canaan leads the alliance to kill the Morwen by fusing his advanced technology with Vikings' Iron Age weaponry. That is the one I was remembering, and that's not a bad one to go back to. Listen, and you know what? Jim Caviezel, I do not know why he's not a prominent A-list name right now, because the guy is damn good and he deserves more. Anyway, guys, I have run out of time here for today. For everybody else who has sent in questions, because there's still a few more to get through, Mason B, David Rivas, Rock with Joe, Lowell, David Riveras, and everybody else, do not worry. I will do a companion video a little bit later today to get caught up on these questions that we haven't answered yet, because you sent in those questions. They deserve to be answered properly in a video. So I will get to those in a companion video just a little bit later today. So keep your eyes open for that. And that will do it, guys, for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and joining us. Guys, don't forget to click the like, thumbs up button. Make sure you hit subscribe. Everybody, stay home, stay safe. If you got to get outside, go for a little bit of a walk, whatever, that's cool. Just try to do it when there's not many people out, and make sure you maintain your social distance, 6 feet or more. Don't gather together in huge things. Let's get this BS behind us just as fast as we can. Special thanks to all of you guys, not just for being here, but those of you who also sent in questions, because you did two things. Number one, you supported the channel while you were doing it. And number two, you just gave us great fun things to talk about. So all of us here on the John Campea Show, thank you guys so much for that. Okay, guys, that will do it for me for now. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to come back again tomorrow with me and Rob, when we'll have even more things to talk about. Thanks a lot for everything, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.